Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host. My name is Shane, and it is viewer request night. Um, yeah, how's everybody doing? Hope everybody is doing excellente. Let's catch up. Sci-Fi, thank you so much for that sub. 8-month streak. It's been a while, and it warms my little pitter-patter heart. This will be your first full Twitch stream since before the surgery. Wow, no pressure, huh? I hope that this is everything that you had waited for. Torn between two lovers and feeling like a fool. Tropical, is there somebody else streaming that you'd rather go watch? If so, I love you. I'm glad that you could stop by. You do whatever feels right for you, right? Random overview question. Were the empires in Europe and Eastern Asia always aware of each other in trading? Or do we know when they started trading? Was it before or after Alexander? So there has always been well, not always, since the Assyrians. So specifically here around 2000 or 1900 BC, there has been pretty substantial trade networks that stretch from this part of the world over here to this part of the world over here. And the Assyrians were the first people that really started figuring out how to do colonies. So Assyria sat roughly right about here, but they had colony cities that they had founded even over here in what we would call today Turkey, Anatolia, whatever you want to call it. And they knew of kingdoms over here like Mari and Edom. I'm sorry, not Edom, Elam. Sorry, said the wrong words. And they knew of the empires over here in India as well, especially the Harappans. We see Harappan artifacts showing up in trade over here. They did not know about China. If they did know about China, it was sort of like in hazy legend. Even India and China weren't trading at that point. The Chinese really didn't break out over into this area until around the probably you start seeing the first like bare scant little remnants of it around the 400s BC, but that's not really until like the Han Dynasty really starts get rolling and conquers all of this region out here, and then like hooks into this larger network that had already existed that was connecting India to over here in Asia. Alexander the Great did a lot of that, but even before him, like the Persians, they had a road that stretched basically from over here in Turkey, right around here, and it stretched all the way down to the Persian Gulf down here, and it was partially for mail and it was partially to move troops around, but it was also used for trade. So this would, of course, would have been the Achaemenid Persians. So Cyrus and Darius and Xerxes, those guys, this is Sparta guys. So that trade route had existed thousands or so years before Alexander even really came into the picture. They were always sort of aware of what was going on around the boundaries, but really they're not going to know really hard factual data about a lot of these places. It's going to be like what they can glean from interacting with traders at big trade cities, which is one of the reasons why this region here in Central Asia becomes so important, because this is one of the areas on Earth that gets sort of cosmopolitanized first. There are people in this region right here, going all the way back to like Alexander the Great time, that can speak the native Indian languages, that can speak some of the Semitic languages over here from Mesopotamia, they can speak Greek, and they can speak Chinese, they can speak Tocharian. They even invent several of their languages, which is a blend of all these different linguistic groups. Central Asia right here is a lot more fascinating than history classes tend to give them credit for. And it really sucks that people don't know more about people like the Kushan Empire and like the Greco-Bactrian states and the Indo-Bactrians and all of those people that I find just absolutely, completely fascinating. A lot of people just don't know anything about those. So that was a 5-minute ramble just off the top here. Bar is low. It's been a rough couple of weeks. You'll be jumping. You love me by the Jermaine Jackson and the rest of the Jackson 5 night. We're talking about the origin of the Germans. So we're going to go all the way back to like the BC period, and we'll be coming all the way up into the AD period. You think you have post-Twitch stress disorder. You've been waiting for Shane to be like, ha, you thought we were going to talk about the Germanic people, and I'm actually going to play Elden Ring. I don't actually own Elden Ring, so there's not really any chance of me sneaking that one up on you. I also don't have a capture card, and even with the new graphics card that I have, I doubt that I'll be able to play Elden Ring in a way that it would stream at the same time without crashing. You have a test for me. I'm somewhat scared, but also it could just be a big goof. Who knows? You're curious why Austria doesn't have a language per se. Why is it German all over the place if it fits for today or whenever? That actually does have a lot of stuff that we can talk about today. That region of Austria, which is, you know, the sort of region right around in here, this area has been under Germanic control for 2,000 years, more or less. In 97 current era, the Chinese sent an ambassador to make contact with the Romans. Yeah, he got to the Persian Empire, and the Persians were like, no, you don't want to go talk to the Romans, man. If you go all the way to the Romans, you're going to have to go like across this desert, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff, and there's like evil people that are going to murder you. You should stay here in the Persian territory, and we'll trade with you. And he went back really happy, and this is when you start seeing Persian kings of the Sassanid line show up in Chinese documents. When did the Chinese do that huge world tour by sea? It depends on exactly which one you're talking about. But if you're talking about Zhang, the guy that basically they claim got all the way over here to the North American territory, that was under around the 1000s. There's a particular dynasty called the Song dynasty that really starts pushing the naval side of the Silk Road, mostly because they don't have access to the northern part up here because of the Mongolian Empire. And some of the naval people from their world around I think that supposedly happened in 1083, but don't quote me on that date. I'm not 100% certain. Somewhere around the 1000s, between 1000 and 1100 of the current era. All right, you're going to give me a Latin sentence. Oh man. I feel like I'm in grad school again. Translate the Latin sentence. Tell us which text it's from, who wrote the text, and what century it was written. Fine, hit me with it. I should make a translation or a point redemption or something for this. It's easy as it Vini Vidi Vici. I know who that was. That was Thaser. The 1st century BC. I'm waiting for the sentence. It's Wasi. Oh man. I feel like I'm once again studying for my comprehensive exams in my grad school for history, where I have to randomly translate a random passage of Latin. It has to be accurate. I don't like that feeling. Hey, Kelly. We're doing a viewer request on the history of the Germanic people. But mostly right now we're just sort of like shooting the breeze. Also, hey Nintendo, good to see you. Are we talking about European affairs again? Yeah, how Germain? Yeah? What's up, Foggage? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. Alright, well, while I'm waiting for this sentence or so from Vipers, we'll kind of give the heads up. Okay, so this is viewer request night. And the particular viewer request came from Sci-Fi Taoist. And the specific request was basically like, where did the Germans come from? Right? Who are they? Where did they come from? What's up with the Germans? And that's a pretty broad question, but I feel like I've been able to put together something that I feel pretty confident is going to give us a good overview of where they started, who kind of gave us information about this stuff. We're going to talk about spoken languages. We're going to talk about written languages. We're going to talk about geography and culture a lot tonight. Didn't they come from the dark side of the moon? They come from Germany. Good night. And Safa's like, signing off. It's a bit more involved than that. A bit, right? Okay, so let's start at, I guess, the beginning. So first off, where do we even get the word German from? Where does this term even originate? And the first time that we really see this being used is in a Greek history by a guy named Posidonius. And he is writing in the 1st century BC, and he uses the word Germani to mean these particular people. Now, that's going to transfer pretty quickly into Latin, and specifically when we do see this showing up in Latin, we're going to see this being used by Caesar, and he's going to call them Germani Ciceronani. Now, what does that mean? It means Germans, right? So Germani, and Ciceronani is that are on this side of the Rhine River. And specifically here, he's referring to the tribe that he had encountered when he was in Gaul. But at that point in time, around Caesar's time, most of the Germans were actually on the other side of the Rhine. Tell me what I haven't learned from playing Sid Meier's Civilization. I did not actually get any sentence from you if you sent one, Vipers. If your internet crapped out, it must have crapped out like right at the moment. So we see that German term show up around the 1st century, and that's sort of where it gets kind of coined. Now, of course, the people groups are much older than that. This is just the first time we see the word German being used. Now, you might go, well, the Germans don't call themselves Germans. They call themselves Deutschlanders, right? So what about the word Deutsch? You know, sprechen Sie Deutsch and stuff like that. Where does that come from? That actually comes from even later. That is a term that gets sort of used popularly by the Carolingian kings. So this is basically after Charlemagne. Charlemagne takes over in about 800 of the current era. So the word that we mean, or the word that we use for like Deutschland, that comes from a term that means like man of the people. So sort of like everyday guy, right? You learned that in TikTok a few days ago. You learned what in TikTok? About Deutschland? Vipers, go ahead and send it. We'll just do it right now. Hey, Infernal, good to see you. And hey, Ishmonite, you're not so late. It's not so bad. Not so bad. A name perhaps given by the Celts to their neighbors. Compare with our old Irish "God our neighbor." Is that in Latin? I'm supposed to translate that to Latin? Oh no, I don't do it that way. I mean, you gave it to me in English. Were you trying to give that to me in English, or were you trying to give that to me in Latin? I don't actually know what that would be in Latin. I'm not particularly good at going from English to Latin. Um, the, the and this is really weird, but like I don't I don't do very good when it's talking about like English to Latin. I do a lot better uh, when it's Latin to English, uh, because for some reason I don't know, it doesn't work for me that way, and I can't speak Latin for garbage. Like I have to memorize it. Um, like if I'm going to like have to learn something, like I know like flashcard words, like individual words, but like if I'm going to try to say a sentence from something, I'm just like I have to sit down and like write all of it out and like conjugate crap, and I can't do declensions in my head. I have to sit down and like stare at them and try to work them all out. Basically, I knew that I was going to have to look at a Latin passage, and I was going to have to translate that um, to English, and that's all that I really prepped for. Because honestly, that was all I really needed to know. And I know that's kind of like the lazy way of doing it, but anyway. Okay. The difference in origin between the three ways to refer to Germany. Oh, cool. You meant Germanus. Okay. Homo sum humani nihil ame alium puto. That is, yeah, in Spanish, that means something completely different, right? So that means I am a human. So homo sum means I am a human. Humani nihil ame alienum puto. So nihil, nothing. I am a human. So okay. So I'm a human, and nothing human is alien to me. So this is from an old writer, old Roman guy named Terence. Uh, Terence, oh crap, when did he live? Third century BC? Question mark? I don't actually know. I don't actually know when he was alive. Um, Second century BC? Wait, okay, so he was from Africa. And if he was speaking Roman, or if he was speaking Latin, that would have to be after Rome conquered Africa. So that'd have to be after the 200s. Yeah, so he'd have to be third century at the earliest. But he might have, anyway, he wrote a whole bunch of plays. Um, I'm a human being, are considered nothing human. Yeah, so there we go. And 163. Ah, okay. Yeah, so I was close-ish. Um, what's up, Nix? How's it going? We've got all the people in the room. Let me do all the shout-outs. I don't know if Nix is still streaming, but Nix is a streamer. You got to go check out some art by Nix. Does some cool stuff. I like how you showed you're working out. I do that in my head. We've got Infernal in the room. Infernal is a great streamer. Does cosplay stuff sometimes, plays video games sometimes, just chats sometimes. Always a fun time. We've got Cave Geek Art in the house, who I'm not supposed to give shout outs to, but now I do it just because I'm, trying to be a jerk. But go follow Cave Geek. He's a cool dude. And you'll have a good time hanging out. On my channel, it's fine. On anyone else's channel, I guess it's a... Okay, Cave. All right. All right. So there we go. There's the test. I would probably give myself a B on that because it took me a long time and I had to think my way through it. My Latin is getting rusty. I need to practice that more. All right, so here's where the Germans come from, Germanic term-wise. What about histories? Well, they're all over the place and they move around a lot. So what I did was find a decent little map here that we're going to refer to several times. All right. So if we look at the little chart here, right, we can see where they were. We can see where they're going. Oh, I forgot David. Crap. Sorry, David. Go follow David because he's a cool dude and a great artist and does cool stuff. What's up, Metran? Good to see you. Yeah, man, I feel you. I feel you. I feel you on that long week. Vipers, that's great. So we can see here that basically all of this northern European region at one time or another was under some sort of influence from some group of people that were considered Germans, right? So earliest Germans, you're going to see people around here, this sort of this lighter color, but then they're going to start spreading and they go all the way up here into the northern region. They're going to come across here and get into what is the Roman Empire. But you can see all these different little names, and if you've been around the stream for the last few streams, you'll recognize probably some of these individual little groups. But you can tell right away that there are just a whole ton of these different little groups of Germans. So they come from all over the place. We know them from a long, long way back. The first time that we actually start seeing anything that we would maybe conclusively attribute to being some version of the Gothic people, it's pretty far back in like the 400s before BC era, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly who they are. The biggest issue here is that when we start seeing these people show up in histories, the people that are writing the histories don't necessarily know very much about them. So this actually kind of gets to what Moose was asking at the top of the stream, like how aware are people that are writing this stuff down of the people outside of their area. So the big historians of the time are going to be people from Egypt and people from Greece and people from Rome. And there are going to be several references to people that are probably the Germans. Going back to people like Strabo, who was a big historian, people like this guy, who is Pliny the Elder, who's writing in the 1st century, who mentions some German people. People like this guy, who's Tacitus, who actually writes an entire little book on the German people, mostly from the position of their kind of weird cultural practices and what's going on with their group. But, you know, we're starting to see organized descriptions of these people in the, we start seeing recognition of them in like the 200s or so BC, but we start seeing like actually like real good descriptions of these people around the 1st century AD. I spent the day learning Swedish maps and archaeological filing archives. Ooh, it's a lot, but hey, at least you know how to look up maps of local areas from the 1600s. There you go. Oh, do you say it plenty? Is that the way that people in the proper way of pronouncing British or proper pronouncing of English say it? Plenty? I'll say plenty if it makes you feel better. You may have missed this, but are the Germani a subset of the Goths, or do they mean the same thing? So Goths are the subset of the Germani. So the Germans as a people group have about a bajillion different little tribes, and the Goths are just one of them. So you start seeing, and that actually kind of leads us into kind of the little, well, actually, let me give you one more little lesson here. You also see a history, the first, what we would consider like full actual history of the Germanic peoples is done by this guy. So this is a picture of him in a mosaic, but this is the historian Jordanes. Jordanes was actually a Goth himself, and he's writing from a lot later. He's writing from the late 500s, but he had access to a lot of this stuff, and clearly he's going to be a pretty important historian because this is sort of the first time that we actually get a history from the perspective of their own people. Now, it should be noted that Jordanes was very highly Romanized, and he had grown up in an atmosphere that was really very, very heavily Romanized in the Byzantine Empire. So he has the heritage of the German people, but does he have the perspective of the German people? That's debatable, right? So even though Jordanes is writing from a specific viewpoint of, I want to tell the story of my people. By the way, his book is called Gaetica, if you want to go read it. The Gaetica. And you can find that translated online for free in full text if you want to just go read some historian stuff. But this is sort of like the first really big work that is attempting to really explain the Germanic people in total. And it's pretty important. It has a lot of really good historical references in it too. So we use this a lot for other historical stuff that's around this period of time. But what we start noticing linguistically, usually around the, it's kind of hard to say, around the turn of the BC CE switch, right? So between numbers going up and then numbers going down and then numbers going up, we start noticing that we are going to start seeing some words that are going to be kind of making their way into especially Latin but also Greek that pretty clearly come from outside sources. And this is because the Romans are trading with a group of people that are up in this region right here. They're right on the border. They had moved into this region by about the 1st century BC and set up camp. And we start seeing some differences in linguistic elements. We start seeing some trading stuff happening where items are showing up from pretty clearly outside of the Roman world. And interestingly, we even start seeing some differences in the way that Romans dress. It turns out that some of the Germanic fashion kind of became a little bit in vogue for some of the Romans. This is stuff that's from far away, so it's exotic. But this again is like right around the switch over from times, from the 1st century BCE to this 1st century CE. So in that area. All right. But there are going to be a lot of different dialects, and this is mostly going to be broken down by region. So by the time we get to about the 1st century of the modern time, so numbers are going up. So this is like the year 1 to year 100. We're going to start seeing different sort of cultural things happening amongst the German tribes. They're going to start sort of regionalizing, and they're going to start kind of clumping up in certain zones. So you're going to start seeing northern German dialects. And northern German dialects are going to be up here. These are the sort of northern coast of Europe. The good old Netherlands, Denmark, islands right here kind of region. And these are going to be the original bases of the Norse languages. So the languages that go on to be, the Viking languages. That's where these come from. You've thought about finding a designer doghouse company in German. Bauhaus. Ah ha 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 ha. Yeah, David, these are your people. So the original people not the original, but the people that first really started turning these areas into what we might call today states are some of the northern German dialects. Now, you also have what we call the Eastern German dialects. And those are going to be people that are kind of over here. Some of the Germans had moved out to the eastern region, so here along the Black Sea coastline, on the Crimean Peninsula, up into what is today Ukraine. And these are going to be your Gothic languages, your original versions of the Burgundian language, the Vandals, who we talked about, are a Germanic people group, and then some people that are sort of smaller groups that haven't popped up yet, the Rugians and the Bastarnians. They're sort of people that are the Eastern Germans that are kind of floating around out here. And what should be noted, and this is something that a lot of people kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily that they don't know it, it's just that they don't think about it. At this particular time period, if we're looking at like the first century of the modern era, this region right here in Central Europe is actually pretty empty. There are not a lot of people that live here. And this region right here of Eastern Europe is even more empty. There are not even what we might call moderate cities in this area for a lot of that period of time. Mostly because the population just wasn't very high. I have noticed a tendency where people sort of think Europe is always just really highly populated, right? Because it's really highly populated now, and the Roman Empire's over here, so all of this region is just crammed full of people, and it's got really big cities, and they're all trading everywhere. That's really not the case. For most of the early Common Era, Central Europe and Eastern Europe are pretty empty, right? The city of Kiev, right?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
Tuna.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Tuna, thank you, my friend. That is You Hate Me, and that comes from Rammstein in the late 90s. So there's a translation for that. Guessing from the SEN is Danish. I believe that's the case, but I can't speak for certain. One might say it's emptier, perhaps. What's up, Lumpy? Needs belly rubs. Dude, I feel you. I could totally use some belly rubs. You remember those movies in black and white? All of them, one after the other during spring break? So, anyway, like Kiev, the big city of Kiev, which is the modern capital of Ukraine, isn't even founded as a city, even in legend, until the 480s, 482, right? So before that, this is a pretty empty area, right? You're doing okay, real life is still very busy, but everything is still under control. I understand that. My world is incredibly tiring. It is the week before spring break at my college, and a lot of students have already decided that they're going to just have spring break. Attendance has been particularly poor these first couple of days, and those that are in class are less inclined to be very involved, which makes it more difficult because I'm a sort of a high energy teacher and I sort of feed off of involvement. It was also raining very hard this morning, and a lot of people were sort of dour because of that. So, but we're here. We're among friends. Everybody go follow Lumpy. He's a great dude. I have a lot of fun hanging out in his chat, and you will too when you go. So, languages. We've got Northern, we've got Eastern, and we also have Western. And so the Western Germanic languages are the ones that are going to be sort of around here. And these are going to be your Frisians, who are going to end up moving over and forming themselves a little kingdom right around here, but that's later on. The Franks, the Alamans, the Alemanni are especially very, very challenging to roam, especially right around this border right in here. The Bavarians. So there was an earlier question about what's up with this sort of southern region right around in here, and why is it all German? Well, that's where the Bavarians start hanging out. It's right around in here. Now, I know that not everybody that is in this area is a Bavarian, so I'm not trying to slander everybody there. If you're in that region and you aren't a Bavarian, that's okay. We're not talking about modern Bavarians. We're talking about ancient barbarian Bavarians. The Lombards and the Angles and the Saxons. So they're part of a Western Germanic dialect group. Barbarian, or Barbarian. Yeah, I can't do it. It's hard. That's pretty hard. Yeah, the Alemanni are going to end up joining up with the Visigoths, and they're going to actually get over here into Spain a little bit later on. So we're getting there, tropical. I teach college. Hey, Ozink, good to see you. And I saw you pop in the other day, by the way, and I don't think that I gave you a good enough welcome, but it's good to see you. Everybody, go give Oz a follow. Oz is an artist, does art stuff here on the Twitch. Go give Oz a follow. I know Oz mostly from hanging out in Autumn's channel, the arts department. So if you don't follow Autumn, you should totally go follow Autumn too, because he's a cool dude. Let's see. Catching up with chat. I teach college. I teach at a college here in the southeast where I live, southeast of the United States. Recently started hanging out on Lumpy channel. It's fun. Yeah. I teach adult levels. Should the students not be self-motivated about... Lumpy. Oh, Lumpy. That's funny. Bavarians make the best desserts. They do. I don't know. I'll take any dessert, pretty much. I mean, I am not one to turn away a dessert, unless it has strawberries on it, and honestly, can't have the strawberries because they could kill me. So, anything else, though, is like good stuff. All right, so we've got some linguistic groups, and what this is going to show us is that these linguistic groups that are showing up in the 100s are going to go on later to become kind of different regions of cultures, right? One of the things that really drives the differences between people groups, especially in the ancient world, is can I understand you when you talk, right? So this is ethno-linguistics, which is the study of how people groups use language to identify with each other and communicate with each other. And ethno-linguistically, when we start seeing individual dialects amongst the German people, again, somewhere around that 1st century or so, this is going to start showing that they have begun to kind of move apart a little bit. So they still have a lot of the same overarching cultural ideas, but because of distance and geographic separation and exposure to different types of languages along the way, they're going to start developing different linguistic groups. And that's going to be kind of a precursor to some bigger changes down the road. Lumpy stream is mesmerizing, indeed. Hey, Martes, good to see you. I saw you pop up earlier and I forgot to say hello. I'm a horrible friend. Good to see you. Thank you for donating to the overall community goal there. Is there any relationship between the Celtic tribes and the Germanic tribes? Technically, no. Originally, there's not really that much difference. I'm sorry, wait, I said that wrong. Originally, there is a gigantic difference because the Celtic people are going to be the sort of first big wave of what we might consider modern migration into the European continent. And they're going to be coming through several hundred years before the Germanic people end up becoming an identifiable independent entity. And the Celts are going to be the only people that are sort of in a lot of these regions before the Romans. The Romans fight against a lot of Celtic people. So there were Celtiberians, sort of the native people of the Spanish and Portugal region over here that the Romans are going to fight against. The Gauls, right? So the original Gauls that were up here before Rome expanded and took over Gaul, those were Celtic people. And then the Celtic people that got over here into the what we call the British Isles. So those are kind of the only ones that are really left alone. And the reason why the Celtic influence in places like Wales and Scotland and Ireland is still felt is because those are the regions of the British Islands that the Romans did not take over, right? So the Romans had basically all of what is modern day England. They didn't have a lot of good luck in Wales. Of course, they constantly fought the people in Scotland and did not do so well against them. And the one time that they tried to seriously invade the Irish ran at them screaming, covered in paint and naked, and the Romans then basically ran away. Um, so. Strawberries can kill you. Yes. You're gonna take me out post-apocalypse. Oh man. Now we're talking about underwear. Are Picts also Celtic? Oh, see, now that's a question that could get me in trouble. So they were almost certainly originally descended from a group of people called the Caledoni. So the Caledoni are basically the original Scottish people. So the Romans referred to this area as Caledonia. The Picts are most likely Celtic, yes. Now, the Picts were also maybe not uniformly Celtic. This is where people, well, so not like trouble, like trouble, but like if I said this in a certain way, some historians would get very upset with the way that I was answering the question. The Picts were a confederation, right? They were a whole bunch of different people from the same sort of geographic area, and they all fought more or less against the Romans for a long time, and then tried to fight against other peoples in the region. Now, most of these people were Celtic, but there were elements of the people that fought in the Pict army, or the Pictish army, that were not Celtic. They were basically not, that they were anti-Romans. So if I said, oh yes, they were 100% Celtic, that's kind of like a not accurate statement. Were they mostly Celtic? Yes. Would they have considered themselves Celtic? Most of them, yes. Their dialect was Celtic and their religion was Celtic, and they had rad body paintings, yeah. There's that really horrible movie, that really horrible King Arthur movie that had the Picts in them. You can see your house from here, yeah. Somewhere in this region, broadly speaking, right? I've grown used to the thought of ancient nude blue warriors, but if some armored blue dude man came in only screaming at me, I think you'd freak out a bit. I mean, I would too, right? I don't want to land on the shores of an island and then have everybody run at me screaming buck naked trying to kill me. That's probably not something that I have on my to-do list for the afternoon, right? All right. So what about written languages? Not just spoken languages. What about written languages? Because this is when we're getting serious, right? So what about Futhark? The original runic language of the northern Germanic tribes is what we call Futhark. And it's a runic language. And if you look at some of these runes and you're a giant nerd like I am, you're like, it's Gandalf! Because these were things that Tolkien lifted from rather readily. Most of the dwarven runes, or the runes of Faerun, are actually Futhark, right? Yeah, like Bluetooth, right. So these are some written versions of some words in the old Germanic northern dialect. And this is from around the 2nd century. And it's specifically going to go on to be used a lot for what we would call Viking runes or Norse runes, right? This is the sort of proto-version of that. And we can even see some of the evidence of Germanic influence here because we have stuff like Awaz, who was a god, and Tiwaz, who was a god. Our day, Tuesday, like the day of the week, Tuesday, is named after this guy, Tiwaz, right? So you see all sorts of different things that will go on to be other stuff, right? Um, Pretty interesting to say the least. Now, that's Futhark. And it's not Futhark. The TH is like the THED thing that happens sometimes, so it's like Futhark. But around the 4th century, we get the full out Gothic written alphabet. And this is going to come mostly because of attempts made to Christianize the Goths. So the church sends missionaries among them. They write out their language and they come up with a written alphabet for the Gothic language. And then they translate the Bible into the Gothic language. Bum ba da bum, right? The day before Woden, yeah. We'll talk about Wodenaz in just a second. Yeah, most of the days of the week that we use in English come from these original Germanic tribal names. But what does the Gothic alphabet look like? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it looks like this. So one of the things that you can see right off the bat is that there is a big influence here from the Greek alphabet. Because, just being honest, the Greeks are the ones that are most likely doing the proselytizing and the conversion here, right? They're the church. Jag pratar lite svenska. He speaks a little Swedish. You lived in Uppsala for 3 years. Cool. I did not know that. I think I did know that. I think I do remember you saying that you lived in Sweden for a little while. Stockholm for 2 years while you work at KTH as a visiting scholar. My wife has been to Sweden and Norway and Finland and Denmark and all the cool places that I haven't been to, and I'm very jealous. But anyway, this is the Gothic alphabet, and you can see here that it looks a lot like the old Greek alphabet, but we've included some new things here where we're going to bring over some stuff from, that old, good old-fashioned runic material that we'd already used for some some Germanic languages. But there you go. By the way, it took a lot to actually try to figure out how to Google search to find a published version of the entire Gothic alphabet, because you go start typing Gothic alphabet, and what you're going to end up with is font maps for the Gothic font in Microsoft Word. So, yeah. All right, now I just realized that I should have done something. All right, I'm going to put on the adventure hat. This is a sudden and unexpected adventure hat showing. Adventure hat. So for those of you that do not know, this is the adventure hat. And when I have seen something with my own eyes, I get to wear the adventure hat and then talk about it and show you a picture of it. But I realized that I have a photo that I can show you that is actually old Germanic runes. I just have to figure out where they are. Give me just a second. I have so many pictures. Yes. I'm in the right location, but is this the right folder? That's underground. I'm looking for a particular photo. And I don't know why I don't have it on this computer. I thought for certain I would have it, like it would just be like right here. Dadgum. Of course this is going to be a jerk and I'm not going to be able to find it. I've already put on the adventure hat. I must locate it at this point. Where are all of my pictures? I need to organize my photos better. That's part of the problem here. Come on. Aha. Yes. Open. And open. All right. So you want to see what Norse runes look like. Here we go. Here are some Norse runes. And you're like, well, that looks like graffiti. It looks kind of crappy. It is graffiti because this particular graffiti is runes that was scratched into a banister in Hagia Sophia. So Hagia Sophia is this gigantic church that was built by Justinian in the 500s in Istanbul, which is, of course, at that point called Constantinople. And one of the things that happened later on in the Byzantine Empire is that the Byzantines made some connections with a group of people called the Varangians, who came down to Byzantium to be bodyguards for the emperor. And one of those guys scratched this into the banister of, at that point, the largest enclosed building on Earth. Viking graffiti on a world wonder, indeed. Indeed. Pretty interesting stuff. You always imagine those kinds of things or graffiti say stuff like, John loves Mary or your mama. Yeah, pretty much. It literally is my name, I was here, right? The actual translation of it is, I was here. That particular piece of graffiti comes from the 900s, by the way. So, there we go. So we have the origin of Norse runes around the 5th century that actually translate to individual letters instead of whole words like the original Futhark runes were. So we get a written language for all these people. Okay, cool. What about their religion? Well, their religion is kind of loose. They are very clearly polytheistic, and they tend to have a certain kind of shared pantheon of gods. People like Wotanaz. And you're like, what the devil is that? Wotanaz. Or, well, I mean, basically Odin. But if you want to see what he looked like originally, here we go. There's an old Germanic version of Wotanaz. Right? So, not particularly the same looking kind of guy that you would think. He looks like aliens. Aliens. That is on a metal vase or metal bowl kind of thing. Skinnier than you pictured. Yeah, he's like Ant-Man, right? He doesn't look like Anthony Hopkins. Right? I hope I don't get in trouble for showing you Odin nipples. I guess man nipples are okay, though. Let me see his little man nipples. This is a man. It's a man. Skinnier than you pictured. Yeah, very much not the big warrior that Odin becomes, right? So Wotanaz, or it starts over here like Wotanaz, ends up becoming Woden, who then becomes Odin. But our day, Wednesday, like Wednesday, the day of the week, we pronounce it Wednesday, but it was originally pronounced Wotan's Day, right, or Odin's Day, and then Thursday is Thor's Day, Friday is Freya's Day, right? So, you've seen many nipples here without wanting to. Honestly, so much of old graffiti is the same as modern. A lot of the old Viking restrictions are like, yeah, pretty much, Metrian. That's 100% accurate. Onsdag, yeah, right. So they have this loose collection of polytheistic deities. They're going to have sort of similar practices. One of the things that was very, very common among Germanic practices was human sacrifice. This is especially after, like, they have a big victory, right? So they've gone on to win a big victory, and they capture a whole bunch of people. One of the things that they would do as a way to sort of celebrate the fact that they had, conquered, was catch a whole bunch of these people and drown them. This is also why Odin is called Mr. Wednesday in Neil Gaiman's book American Gods. Indeed. Moche Padre set the bar so high, your puny Odin nipples are nothing. Yeah, I couldn't even show you all of the Moche Padre. It's so fascinating, though. That's crazy stuff. Oh, I have this map, and I should have shown this earlier. So, like, in the 200s, here we go. Here's your Germans. Sitting right around here. Most of them are kind of doing their thing. Right? This is 200 BC, by the way. I got my pictures way out of order. But somebody asked about the Celts. So here's your Iberian Celts, and here's your Britannic Celts. So here's your Germans. It's the Germans. So they're going to do a lot of human sacrifice stuff. They don't really have a lot of temples, mostly because a lot of these people don't live in cities. They don't really start living in cities until they take over land and settle down permanently. Most of these people are semi-nomadic, so they would have probably something like a tent or a sort of a pavilion that they might be able to set up that was sort of a religious place in their village. But they didn't really have what we would consider today like temples or anything like that. So they didn't really have a whole bunch of formulated, they had formulated practices, like weddings and funerals and stuff like that. But when it came to, like worship services, they didn't go to church every Sunday and do their thing to Woden, right? They just sort of did the sacrifices on the days that it was appropriate to do. They did the rituals before they went to do something important. So it's kind of a loosely constructed religion here. One of the things that we read about a lot from the Roman perspective is something that the Romans called the Ver Sacrum, or the sacred journey of the man. So apparently, and we're getting most of this stuff from the Roman point of view, so it's kind of speculative about whether or not this is actually 100% accurate as the German people would have understood it. But apparently it was very common for young men, right on sort of the cusp of adulthood, to try to go outside of their tribe and go do something that was, a really manly deed to sort of show off, to establish the fact that they were a man. So maybe they lead a raid, or maybe they go kill an animal with their bare hands or something like that, or maybe they go challenge somebody that's really big to a fight or something like that. So this idea that there was kind of a passage into adulthood for men where they had to go off and do something to kind of seek their fortune, right? Britannic Celts were the best. How many people were there? Like, how many people in England? That's a hard thing to say. I really don't know accurate population guesses. I mean, I could give a really rough guess, but I do not trust myself to guess. But I would bet that, like, in all of the, like, around this time, if we looked at somewhere like Britain, there might be 2 or 3 million people in Britain at that point that are native, and then probably twice that many that were Romans living in cities, various points. But it's really hard to guess. Census data for the ancient world is really shady, and there's a lot of ways to estimate. But because temporary dwelling places are a lot harder to find archaeologically, if you're not building a location out of stone, you're just going to build it like a wooden pavilion. That doesn't stick around, right? especially in the wet soil of most of the region of England, right? Uh, so you have to sort of guess at how many villages there were, right? So you found maybe 10 villages, and you go, maybe we found a quarter of the villages, or maybe there were 40 villages, and if each village was this size, this could have supported this many people. So this area had this many people in it, but it's really, really speculative. And anybody that is claiming to offer population data from regions of semi-nomadic people is automatically suspect in my book. I will not believe anything that they do until I really thoroughly read the paper or review the research, because it's really hard to guess. You're not too late. You're arriving precisely when you mean to. What's up, Kyle? Or capture the Avatar, right? The Fire Nation, we're going to go off and be my own man and take my uncle with me and make tea and all that stuff. Best day is Saturday, or Lordag in modern Sweden. Laugadag from Old Germanic. Laugo, which means water or waterfall, is the day that everybody took a bath. Well, there you go. Now it's named after Saturn, the guy that was the god of the harvest in Rome. Oh, lumpy. Archaeologists are sus people. I mean, I have met people that are archaeologists that I would trust. I have met a lot of people that are archaeologists that I would not trust. I would say archaeologists are people, with the full understanding that that means some of them are worth believing and other ones are not. Weekly blasts. You're glad you live in the hygienic era, right? We Swedes reject Saturn, Lord Dog forever. Weekly baths, and that's being hygienic. Yeah, and the Vikings were like the hygienic people of the time. I say Vikings, it's kind of not a good word to use, but it's the one that we most likely all know. All right, so let's talk about a historical overview, and we'll kind of hit the high points along the way. So, where do the earliest evidences of people that one day would go on to be Germans come from? All right, so we're talking about like the first people that ever come out of these areas. Who are they and where are they? So if we look mostly here in what we would call southern Scandinavia, so right around this area here, you start seeing evidence of the first real physical cultures somewhere back in the late Bronze Age. But those people are not what we would call Germans. Those are just the first people. And there's a whole bunch of different cultures and civilizations here. And it gets really messy, and we're not going to necessarily go through all of these individual groups. But somewhere in the late Bronze Age, so this is like 1500 BC, you're going to start seeing people in this area. These are the first people that are like the great, 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 great grandfathers of the Germans, way, way back in time. All right. Now, if we fast forward about 1,000 years, the people that were in that area are going to start moving southward, and they're going to come into contact with the Romans, right? They're going to have a little bit of contact with the Romans, but honestly, what sort of runs into the biggest issue right here is that around the same time that these people in this area are moving south, the Celtic people are moving to the west. And the Celts are actually going to run into the Germans, and they're going to have some pretty big knockdowns and dragouts. And it's not even really a good idea at this point to even necessarily call these people Germans at this point. They are kind of like the fathers of the Germans at this point. So they're like one generation kind of removed at that point. On Friday, people smelled so bad that they used to write protective runes all over the road. That's the word on the street anyway. I love that. That was quite tasty. Very, very, very nice. Now, so the Celts are going to come over and take over all this stuff, and this is going to kind of blunt the Proto-German expansion south. So what they're going to end up doing is basically going this way, right? And they're going to sort of follow the Celts around. So there's going to be a group of people here, and a group of people here, and a group of people here. And if you've been with us since the beginning, you'll know that these are, again, sort of the origins of our three different sort of linguistic groups, the northern, the eastern, and the western. Now, the first time that we're going to get, like I said, really good reference to these people is in like the 400s. You're going to start seeing Greek colonies around the coastline of the Black Sea that run into these people, and they're going to be like, there are people here, and they are people like this. And these are most likely the Bastarnae or the Skirian people, some of these early German groups that are way gone by the time that we're talking about them moving over and living in the other part of the Roman Empire. Now, if we continue up to the point where Rome is trying to expand here out of Italy, they're going to run into some of these people that were in the Western group, especially the Cimbri and the Teutones. So if you've ever heard of like the Teutonic Knights or the Teutonic Order of Knights that come from sort of this region right around in here, that's because that's where the original Germans that the Romans ran into came from. The Cimbri and the Teutones came from roughly this region right here. Right, so this again is sort of that Austria region of like, why doesn't Austria have its own language? Well, I mean, it was a Germanic people group way all the way back in like the 100s BC. The Cimbri are going to invade Rome and cause a whole bunch of trouble in the 100s. By the time that Rome has expanded, over here into Spain and up into Gaul and basically has all of this, they're going to run into yet more German people. And this is going to be when you start seeing the Germans sort of being all over the place, and the Romans are kind of running into them all over the place. And there is a really big sort of Germanic reorganization around the 2nd century of the current era, or Common Era. And by this big point of reorganization, this is mostly going to be from contact with external forces. The distance between these groups that had started off originally as just linguistic differences, by the time we get to the 200s of the Common Era, are going to turn into actual cultural differences. And you're going to start getting to the point where the regions of Germanic peoples probably couldn't understand each other talk anymore. They would have probably needed translators. Now, they weren't completely separate, but this would be like the difference between Italian and Spanish. They're both based on a Latin language, but because of the exposure that these different areas have had to different people groups, the languages are going to pick up elements from those different groups and sort of, combine it or mush it together to make its own language. So, there are words in Italian that still are Latin, whereas the word in Spanish is an Arabic word, because Spain was exposed to Arabic for hundreds of years under the control of the Muslim Caliphate over there, right? You want to point out that David Hasselhoff never conquered the Celts? While visiting Riga for a chemistry conference, we took a small guided tour, and the tour guide said, "So of course we'll skip over the bulk of Lubonic Knight's history since we all know it. You Googled it discreetly to not insult her, but the Lubonic was a branch of Teutonic but settled in Latvia." Yeah. That particular group is going to cause a lot of trouble to the Polish kingdom that was right around in here in the 1400s. So the Teutones, who basically took over all of the Baltic region right around in here and set themselves up a Teutonic state, are going to cause a lot of trouble. And this is actually going to be one of the catalysts that ends up pushing the Polish to kind of unifying with Lithuania and forming the larger Commonwealth of Poland-Lithuania. I don't know everything. I know lots of things, but not everything. Italians can understand Spanish, but not so much the other way, right? So, but this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, it's not an easy level of communication. And by the time we get to about the 2nd century, the linguistic and cultural differences between our different Germanic regions are going to be are going to be so different that they're probably not going to be able to easily communicate. So there is and I'll share this with you. I should note here that there are a lot of histories that come out about this region in this period of time, and there are sort of terms that get applied to these groups of people. So we have Germans of 3 different regions, and this is kind of a ha-ha thing, I guess, but we have Germans of the plains, Germans of the sea, and Germans of the forest. Now, what does this mean? Really, it just means Eastern, Northern, and Western. But Germans of the plains actually sounds kind of fancy. So let's talk about some of these groups in particular. If we're looking at what's going on over here, the Germans of the plains are mostly going to be your Goths, right? So again, this is around the 2nd century where we start seeing actual cultural differences between the different groups of Germans. And the Germans of the plains are mostly going to be the remnants of that Eastern Germanic linguistic group that have developed their own cultures, and these are the Goths that are going to show up and cause so much trouble. Of course, they're the ones that we've been talking about if you've been hanging around on Thursdays with the Roman stuff that we've been doing. They're the ones that have been invading and wrecking everybody's world. And then the Fire Germans attacked. D&D 5 removed all of their race bonuses. Oh, man. Every time you say Teutons, you picture a 50s band? Yeah. I'm not supposed to say that. No, Lumpy, that's fine. You do your thing, my friend. You be all of the you that you want to be, right? Sounds like the cue for a musical number to explain the difference, right? And this is where Yakko comes in and sings a song that talks about the gods of the plains and the gods of the sea and the gods of the forest am I. Right. So, there we go. So the Goths are mostly the Goths of the plains. Now, if we look at the Goths of the sea, these are going to be the ones that sort of get over into this area up here. And this is going to be your Frisians and your Danes and the Saxons and basically the people that go on to become Scandinavian and British Islanders. That sounds like a cool start of a good fantasy book, right? And the Goths of the plains could no longer communicate with the Goths of the sea. I'd watch that movie or read that book. And then you have the Germans of the forest, who are your Germans over here. And these are going to be your Franks, your Burgundians, and your Bavarians, right? Daggerland was already underwater when these tribes moved. Yeah, that would have been underwater at that point for quite some time. I don't know exactly, like 2,000 or so years, a while. Yeah, a while. All right, so we've got our different German groups. We've got different German tribes. They've kind of spread out all over the place. And what do they end up doing? Well, you know, when Rome collapses in the West, this is again in 476, a lot of these Germans are going to be in position to take over big chunks of land, right? Like the Goths. And if you have been around, you'll know that there are 2 different big clumps of Goths. There's the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. But if we look at the Visigoths, they come out of the east, and they get down here into Italy, and then they come out here, and again, this is like, you know, 401 and 410 and 412. This is when they sack Rome, by the way, in 410. They come down here, and they take over big parts of Spain, and they set themselves up here in Toulouse, which is their capital, which is in modern southern France. And this region right here becomes the kingdom of the Visigoths. And they will hold that area from that period of time in the early 400s all the way up until 721. So the Visigoths, these Germanic people that move into Spain and southern France right here, are going to hold on to this until the Umayyad Caliphate invades from northern Africa in 721 and wrecks all of this stuff. Now, we also see here we have the Ostrogoths, and they're coming out of the east. This is mostly under Theodoric, the guy that we talked about, Theodoric the Amal, who comes down here and takes over all of Italy from another barbarian guy named Odoaker, and adds a lot of this territory to his kingdom, right? So this kingdom of the Goths is actually not going to last as long. It was arguably the more stable of the kingdoms, but, and this is a bit of a spoiler for the next time we talk about Eastern Rome, the Gothic kingdom here in Italy is going to be broken up by an emperor from the east named Justinian, who decided, I'm going to conquer all of the Roman Empire and just put everybody back together. So that's kind of the end of the Ostrogothic kingdom. And that happens in the 500s, but the Visigoths hang around for another 220 something years. Why did they move so much? At that point in the early 400s, it was mostly because the Romans were still somewhat viable. And they were able to sort of push them around by moving armies and nudging them. But honestly, it was because they still weren't ready to live in cities. They were still sort of plundering and looting and raiding. So they were always going to, where's the next big city? Where's the next big city? Where's the next big city? Right? Your DNA shows that too. Does your DNA show Germanic heritage? You have some people that came from Spain over to the islands. I don't want to tell everybody exactly where you are, but like the Caribbean islands, you get some Germanic heritage. If so, that's really neat. They got to go somewhere, right? So are modern Hispanic people sharing ancestry with Germanic Goths? In many cases, yes. You're going to have some of the original people that lived in Spain, some of the very, very basic, what we might call first inhabitants of Spain. There's a layer of Celtic influence over the top of that. There is a layer of broader Western European on top of that when, they're dominated by Rome for about 700 years. And then you have Gothic on top of that, which is German, right? And then you have the Arabic influence on top of that, right? You have European Jewish and Levant. Yeah. So the European Jewish comes from the diaspora of the Roman people. I'm sorry, the Roman Empire, where they destroyed the Jewish state in the first Jewish revolt and then basically deported all of the Jewish people all over the world. A lot of those people ended up in Spain. Spain has got a lot of different influences. One of the top places I want to travel to is Spain because you can go there and see so much stuff from so many different people groups. Oh, Cryomera, what up? It's good to see you, Cryo. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing okay. Week has been tough, but stream has gone real well, and this is always sort of brightens the day. Everybody go follow Cryomera, who is an amazing artist and a really cool person and somebody that you should hang out with because it'll make your life better. Guess who's saying Guten Tag, Herr Aris later? Probably me. I would end up over there eventually. I would suspect. And yet Spaniards are super racist towards Latin America because they think they are racially better than us. Oh, Spanish people. So I haven't actually shown this in a long time, but for those of you that have maybe been around since the very, very beginning of Adventures in History, we actually have a fortune, right? The stream has an official fortune. And I got this out of a real fortune cookie. And I just thought that it would be perfect for the stream. So this is the fortune of the stream. And this is a lesson that has to be taken to heart because it came out of a fortune cookie, and we all know that everything that comes out of a fortune cookie has to be believed. So here's the fortune of the stream. And it is, we all have a lot more in common than it seems. We all have a lot more in common than it seems. Isn't that true? Focus. There we go. We all have a lot more in common than it seems. Right? And racism and bigotry is stupid. It's stupid. Let's just be real. We all share 99.9% of the exact same DNA. And if you're going to say that 0.01% of you makes you better than anybody else, that is not what we would call in the scientific community statistically significant. And that means you're arguing from a really poor logistical point of view, and you should stop because it's not logical at all. At all. We are all cousins. We're like a big family here, indeed. I feel like you should have a fortune cookie channel redemption where you open a new cookie and reveal the stream fortune for the day. Eris already has that. So Aristotle actually has a whole thing of fortunes. But if I actually got to eat the cookie, that would be worth getting a cookie because I love fortune cookies. Brittany actually one time bought me a bag of fortune cookies just because I love fortune cookies. Anyway, unless what you mean that we all have in common is that we're stupid. Everybody has moments where they don't always make the best decisions. Everybody's been there, right? That doesn't mean that we're stupid. If we make a wrong decision and we learn from it, it's not as bad, right? They were chocolate covered. It was amazing. Like, oh, my wife knows me so well. All right, so there's the kingdoms of the Goths. What about the Frisians? And this is a group that a lot of people probably have not heard of. These are one of the Goths of the sea. I'm sorry, the Germans of the sea. So if we're looking here up in the northern part, the only thing that I could find is actually all in Latin, but you know, here it is. This is the Kingdom of Frisia. So basically where this is the mouth of the Rhine River in France, and this little region right here along the, what we would call today the North Sea, this is Magna Frisia, the Kingdom of the Frisians. Chocolate covered fortune cookies, what is this sorcery? They are for real good. It's a little crazy over here, but things are good. It's like yogurt covered pretzels, they are. So the Frisians, some of these Germans of the sea, they get their own little kingdom. And this something that they set up about 600, and it really only lasts about 130 something years because the big bads of this area are going to basically be the Franks, and we'll show the Franks here in just a second. But the Frisians are going to be conquered by the Franks in 734. But what about all of those Angles and Saxons and England? And oh my goodness. Now, this period of time in England becomes referred to in history as the Heptarchy, which is ironic because I've seen a friend mistake this, and he thought that it said Herptarchy, and he's like, are they all ruled by snakes? Because, you know, herpetology, but it's Heptarchy. Yes, so 7 kings. The 7 kings. Origins of the lizard people, right? So that's where it comes from, right? That's the origin of the lizard people. We corrected him, and it's all good. But if you've ever seen any of these kingdoms like Mercia, which shows up in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, road across the kingdoms of Mercia. But these regions right here, like Wessex, this is not West Sex, this is West Saxony, right? Because the Saxons are over here. Essex, this is East Saxony. East Anglia is the Angles, right? So all of these regions right here, like the Umbrians, right? Add an A and you get a Mercia. It's not spelled exactly the same. Not exactly, but close, right? But anyway, what we're looking at here is a region of time where the Angles and the Saxons move over. These, again, are some of the Germans of the sea. They move over to the British Isles, and they're going to set themselves up some great little kingdoms over there that are going to last various periods of time. Oh, Nottingham, indeed. And this is mostly going to be kind of a hodgepodge of different countries. Some of them grow, some of them collapse, some of them get absorbed by other countries. But England is not going to be united into a monarchy until King Athelstan, who himself might have had some old Germanic blood because he was almost certainly part Viking. And Athelstan is going to unite England in 937, and that's going to kind of end the Heptarchy. But the big ones are the Franks. It's the Germans. No Sea Germans. The Mer Germans, right. The Mermans, if you will. Instead of Mermay, it should be Mergermay. I don't know. I'm just trying to. I'm spitballing here, and it's not working out well. Did they grow gills? No, they had boats. Germains, right? You have ancestors from Oz. I missed the timing on that, and I lost the context. You have ancestors from England, some particular part of one of the old heptarchal kingdoms. All right, so here we have all of the territory that ends up being conquered by the Germans. And you're like, but wait, I didn't think that these were all Germans, but they are. Austrasia, yeah. This actually right here was the first part of the kingdom of the Franks. This little cross-shaped area right here is going to be the oldest part of the Frankish kingdom. And here we see again Frisia, Saxony, right? Thuringia, Swabia, Bavaria, right? The Lombards, Burgundians, all of these areas are run by different Germanic people groups. And over the course of time, we can see here all of these different expansions, right? So this is the earliest territory, and then Clovis starts expanding. And Clovis is going to conquer all of this area here, and then we're going to get additional additions over the course of the period of time of the Merovingians, and this is going to switch over to the Carolingians, and we're going to get some stuff down here in Spain and Italy, and by the time we get to 814, this is sort of the height of Charlemagne, you're going to see all of this stuff being brought into the larger Frankish kingdom. And it doesn't last past Charlemagne, because then when he dies, he splits it into thirds, and it just sort of wrecks everything. But, you know. The Bretons and the Saxons, the Angles must be further north. Yeah, by that point, they would have been over here. So the Franks are actually going to start pushing on the Bretons and the Saxons. See here, there's a big war between them from 1777 and 1797, where the Saxons are finally conquered. And that's going to push the... by the way, there are also already Bretons and Saxons over here in the British Isles at this point. Those later Germanic DLCs weren't as good as the original pure money grabs loaded with microtransactions. It was really just a whole bunch of skin changes, and you know, you got to unlock skins that were like older versions of the characters from different games in the past. But like, it didn't actually even change the gameplay any. It's just like, oh, do you want to run around as the guy from the first version of the Frankish game? But it's, I mean, you didn't even get any new weapons. It's just all friggin' skins and like horse armor, right? Nobody wants this stuff. Nobody wants this stuff. Oh, Nottingham. Okay, cool. Going to be off for the night. All right, Metrand, take it easy. I hope you have a good one. Good luck on your excursion. Hope you have a good time with your old maps. I love old maps, but I understand that they do get old, right? Take it easy, Metrand. Have a good night, and I'll see you around next time. Okay, so the thing about the Franks is that everyone wants to see new horse armor. Oh, man. I remember when Horse Armor expansion came out, and it did nothing, and people were just burned on that. This, by the way, if you've never played Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, there was a particular DLC that came out for horse armor. And the idea was, oh, look, you're going to be able to dress your horse up and all of this stuff. But it didn't actually do anything. Your horse still died really easily. and horses were sort of useless in the game overall anyway. You could just fast travel, and it was a lot better than riding a horse around everywhere. And people got really excited and bought all this stuff expecting a lot of content, and then it was just lame skins. Just lame skins. For $3. But this is before everything had DLC, right? This is before everything was jumping on the $20 DLC bandwagon. So, all right. So this gets us to kingdoms of German people. By the way, the Frankish kingdom of the Germans is the only one that's really still around in this more or less same area. The current United Kingdom is not really run by the same people because of that whole Norman invasion thing, and various other invasions from Scandinavian people groups. But that's pretty much it. Like the Franks and maybe parts of Germany, but not even all of them because there's other movements of people. But anyway, that's what I had planned. So that is a very rough outline of a history of the German people. So, sci-fi, I hope that is everything that you wanted to know about the German people, and perhaps gave you some new avenues to study when you're doing some heritage research. Yeah, so many tribes. Lots and lots of different people groups. We're being visited by a puppy. Are you going to come see me? You want to come up here and see me? Come on. Okay. Oh, you've been outside. You have wet little paws. Hello, puppy. Give me sugars. Oh, yes. Hello. Oh, hello, Kaylee. Hello. Hello. What are you up to, you rotten thing? Where are you going? Okay, it was just sugars and gone. Sugars and gone. Yes, we'll share the puppy emote. So, there we go. You have a book on the Swabies as well. Yeah, the Swabi are another group. Were the Normans not Germanic? That's one of those kind of loaded questions. At what point do the Germanic heritages of the Scandinavian people become independent and recognizable as Scandinavian instead of German? And at that point, when do they then invade France and marry into the French people? And then do they invade England? Were the Normans Germanic? Partially, yes. Totally, no. The Normans were Scandinavians from like Viking territory, and then ended up moving to the northern part of France in invasions over the course of the 700s and 800s, and then conquered a big chunk of northern France from the Carolingian kings by basically threatening them to death and telling them that if they didn't give them big chunks of land, they were all going to die. So, yeah. All right. All right, kisses and treats. So when did Angela Merkel defeat Attila in single combat in order to gain control of the Rhineland? Didn't the Franks fill into much of the France area? Yeah, so if we look back at our map here, all of this territory right here, that's inside of this red dashed line, ends up becoming part of the larger Frankish kingdom. So this is, modern day France is sort of right here. But then also large portions of Germany, what is today Belgium and Netherlands, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, parts of northern Italy, This would have been Switzerland and Austria and even parts of stuff over here, which would have been like Slovenia and Croatia. Um, the Vikings were so successful because longships were cheap and flat packed. They had a very low draft, so they could go up rivers. Yeah. Scandinavian influence. Yeah. The Vikings were so. I just read that. There's 10 days left on the Oops All Photos funding window. What happens if we fall short? I just restart it with more time. I can go in and alter the time. It makes you put a limit, and then it tells you that you can only set it for a month, which I think is stupid. But I can just go in and push the button, and it'll kick it out. So we'll get there eventually. Never fear. Your progress will not be forgotten. All right. So that is all for me. What about you all? Are there any more questions? Is there anything that is pressing on the mind? Do we want to do any point redemptions or anything like that? The standard question book. All right. You all know the drill. This is the standard question book and home study outlines. What? It is a book full of questions that went along with a college history course. I do not have the college history course. I just have the question book. So it's full of a bunch of random questions. And what we do is we find a page like this page. And then I put my finger on a page and we kind of go down the row. Let's get one up at the top. Let's get this one. And then I look at the question, and if I can answer it, I answer it. And if I can't answer it, I look up the answer. All right. What year was the first newspaper published in America? Give the name and the date. I don't actually know that answer. I don't know the first newspaper published in America. So we're going to look this up. You want to redeem history of bread. Okay, so here's the thing, Lumpy. There is a list of people to redeem. I will put you on the list. But when it comes to doing redemptions, I have a list of people basically waiting. So next time we do a... Okay, so for those of you wondering what the devil is going on, viewer request streams come from two different ways. One viewer request way is people actually spend the points to sort of buy an episode. Another way is people vote on the episode. And I only do viewer requests usually every other week. And I alternate which ones we do. So this one was a point redemption by Sci-Fi Dialist. The next one is going to be a vote episode. And we already have the topic for that one. We voted on it last time that we had a voting episode. The voting went to the Highland clearances, which is the period of time basically where England sort of tried to go up in Scotland and wreck everybody's world. So that will be the next viewer request that we do, not next week, but the following week. And on that point, we'll need a new redemption, and we'll do a point redemption. And if anybody that's on the list, which is Metrand is at the top of the list, then David, then Vipers, then Foggage, and then now Lumpy. So we'll just pick whoever's here, and I'll go down the list, and whoever's here will get a chance to redeem the points. So that's how it goes. That's the only way that I can think of to try to be fair, because I don't want to just do stuff where I just let people buy points, because then that doesn't let everybody be involved in the viewer request all the time. So there we go. The answer is 42. What do you think about every person of European descent being related to Charlemagne? I don't think that's true. You had to be in Pennsylvania or something. This seems more trivia than history. Viper says that it's the Pennsylvania Packet and Daily Advertiser. It began publication in September 21, 1784. America's first independent newspaper was the New England Courant, published by Benjamin Franklin's older brother in 1721. Huh. Nation's first daily newspaper. What does it specifically say here? In what year was the first newspaper published in America? Give the name and the date. Now, the question before that does actually mention Benjamin Franklin specifically, because it's asking about what did Poor Richard's Almanac, published by Benjamin Franklin, contain? So that's like, the stuff about like when to plant things and how to grow things, and gave like horoscope kind of stuff and general advice. And then the next one is what year was the first newspaper published in America? So I'm leaning to the 1721 option, because it seems by context of questions that we're talking about Benjamin Franklin. So it would make sense that that particular newspaper would have been one published by Benjamin Franklin, or by someone around Benjamin Franklin. You found an earlier one, Public Occurrences, both foreign and domestic. The first newspaper published in America was printed by Richard Pierce and edited by Benjamin Harris in Boston on September 25th, 1690. Yeah, see, and this is the crazy thing. Like, if we had the book, I could go to page 307 where I'm supposed to find the answer to this, and it would tell me what they wanted. But because we don't have the book, I don't know the answer. So it's kind of weird. And that's sort of the weird thing about the standard question book, is that we don't always know. Don't always know. So it's either 1690, 1721, or 1784. But I feel like because of the context, it would probably be, they would probably have wanted the Benjamin Franklin one. Or not the one that's Benjamin Franklin, the one by Benjamin Franklin's brother. Pennsylvania Packet was the first daily newspaper. That brings us to summer. Yeah, I mean, I could always increase the point total, but I don't know. I feel like I've left it alone so long now that it would be weird if I randomly increased it to everybody. So, was it the House or was it the Senate? Because I know that the Senate passed a bill earlier today. Did the House also pass it already? And it's already on. And it's not actually abolish daylight savings. It was to make daylight savings year-round. It did not get rid of daylight savings. The Senate voted to make daylight savings year-round. Yeah, so it got rid of the time change, but it established daylight savings forever. Yeah, so it's currently going to the House. Which one is real time? Is standard time. Standard time is actual time. Daylight savings time is where they push time back by an hour so as to create an extra hour of daylight in the end of the day. All right, Oz, good to see you. Take it easy. Thanks for dropping by. Yeah, have a good night. There is no real time. What do you mean by year-round? So in America, we have two different times. We have standard time and we have daylight savings time. And at 2 points in the year, we will switch from either daylight savings time to standard time, or from standard time to daylight savings time. So on Sunday morning, basically at basically 2 in the morning, when it hit 2 in the morning, it just suddenly became 3 in the morning. And in the fall, when we get to November, there will be a night where it goes from 3 a.m. and it'll just go back to 2. Which one is standard time? The one for the fall? Yes. So standard time is where it gets dark really early So it gets dark at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Lots of states don't. Like Hawaii doesn't, California doesn't. Yeah, so if the bill passes, there will be no time changes. It will just be daylight savings time all the time. No one wants daylight savings. Can we all just communally refuse to participate? This is the hot take stuff here. How would you apply it during the rest of the year? Most of the year we are on daylight savings time. Like we are on daylight savings time right now. We went on it Sunday. And when it comes time to switch off of it in November, we just wouldn't switch off of it. It would just keep on going like it was. Time anarchy. Give me 9 p.m. summer evening sunsets. My brain knows that I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We'll just say that. And it's supposed to be 6 o'clock, but it's really 5 o'clock. And my brain knows. My brain knows. All right, ladies and gents. Are there any other questions or point redemptions or anything like that? Otherwise, I think we's about to go do the raid. We's about to go do a raid. Unless there are other things to do. And if not, we can hang around and talk some more. But I think we's about to go do a raid. All right. So, yeah, I think it's about time. I'm not seeing anything come through. And also didn't pause very long for that. But I'm kind of tired. And I feel like I need to just kind of like whoosh. Anyway. So, here's what we're going to do. We is going to go raid our good friend Kirk Shannon, who I never get to raid because he very rarely streams at the same time that I do. I have not been able to raid Kirk in forever. So we're going to go raid Kirk. He's a great dude. I have some of his art currently being framed right now so that I can put it up on the wall because he's a cool dude and he does amazing art. Our battle cry when we arrive is adventure. And if you have any of those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in the chat. If not, just yell adventure and put a whole bunch of exclamation points after it. Well, we bought the frame and the pieces of art are sort of oddly shaped, so we're really just getting a mat for it. We're not like doing the whole thing for that particular stuff. Yeah, but framing does get expensive. This is sort of a larger part of a gift that I bought for Brittany for our anniversary last year, and we've just sort of had them sitting and kind of waiting. So anyway, long story short. Anyway, we're going to go raid Kirk. He's a cool dude. I like his art a lot, and he has got a good chat. So yeah, we're going to go raid Kirk. I thought I'd click the button to raid him, and stuff is going crazy, and Twitch is being a jerk face. There we go. There we go. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, as always. We will be showing up again on Thursday. That's when our next stream is going to be. We'll be talking about what's going on in the Americas during this period of time of the 5th century, and mostly about cool country, city called Teotihuacan, which we talked about a couple of times. But anyway, I'm not going to give the whole thing away. Thursday night, 1900 Central Standard Time, I'll be here. We'll be talking about stuff, and yeah, you all have a good one. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.